Recording. All right, so we're live on TikTok at Wellness Cleveland Patti, and this will be posted to my YouTube channel, Patti Napolitano, social worker, all one word. And today we're talking about positionality and cultural representation. Now, I teach social work 626 at Cleveland State University in their Masters of Social Work program. The title of the course is Advanced Generalist Practice with Communities. And the purpose of the course is to mentor, educate, and guide young career professionals in developing some community organizing, community building tactics, where we can encourage citizens to become citizens and participate in things. So we have a lot of research articles and open educational resources, and this one, I mean, probably the best source of content is going to be the open educational resource textbook that will include some course adoption for free for anyone who wants to use it, but it's going to be a multimedia text with things like this, as well as some interviews. I am so excited about the people with lots and lots of experience in community building to talk with you about what they do. And I'm going to spoil it for you. It's listening. It's so much listening. So today we're talking about cultural appropriation and cultural representation and representation in stories and why that matters. And I'm going to begin. It just came right up to the right window. Love when that happens. We're going to begin with Crazy Rich Asians, because I remember in 2018, this movie came out and people were really talking about it, about the depth and breadth of representation in this movie. And I watched it and I was just enamored with the storytelling, with the characters. There's so much really great context that made me understand Asian communities in a way I had not before. And I loved to recognize people who I knew in the movie. And I thought about my own cultural representation after this movie came out, and I was quarantined with teenagers, my own teenagers. And they really want to see the movies that we bring up in conversation. So my kids have a notes app where they talk about movies they have not seen that we reference a lot. So in my family, last name Napolitano, again, a spoiler, I've got some Italian heritage on my father's side of the family. And my dad had a lot of feelings about Godfather when it came out. My dad, when he was young, looked like Al Pacino. Al Pacino today wishes he could look like my father at the age of 88. Gorgeous. But my dad said in the movie theater, he's a deeply quiet man, and a very humble man. And he lived in an Irish neighborhood. He grew up in an Irish neighborhood in the city of Cleveland. And so he always wanted to make himself seem less Italian. And because Italians were not afforded the same privileges as white people, they were not white yet at the time that he grew up after the Second World War. And there's actually a name in Italian if you are one of the Italians who gets very dark in the summer. It's some kind of a term that means eggplant, like you're purple like an eggplant. And there's on the East Coast and West Coast of this country, I have stories, and my husband has family stories of people not being able to use the whites' bathrooms or the whites' drinking fountains towards the end of summer. People would just say, nope, you don't belong here. So their whiteness was conditional, as is all whiteness is conditional. So my father saw the movie Godfather, and in the theater, he said, I felt like everyone was staring at me. And when I came out of the theater, that was the first time people just started openly asking me if I was in the mob everywhere I went. So it was so embarrassing for him. So was it representation? Yeah, because he knew people who were in that kind of a life, and he worked very hard to not be a part of that, allegedly. So what is different about Moonstruck? Well, I was watching Moonstruck with my children, and I was just weeping at the food they were making, at the stories they were telling, at the superstitions. I went, oh, I recognize that. Oh, I could recognize the actions of older people who I miss and love through, like the old man who's walking his dogs to the park and howling at the moon. Like all of those things just brought to life people I know and love and miss. When my kids were like out, checked out, thought it was a stupid movie within 15 minutes, right? So representation, I am not from the Asian community, and it still spoke to my heart. I love stories. God, Moonstruck, I don't need other people to love it or see themselves in it, but it was deeply moving and visiting up parts of myself and affirming parts of myself that are very true and I don't have a name for. I recognize that this is something I had done or saw in the war. It's a 1994 film starring Kevin Costner and Elijah Wood, and really explores class, trauma, and invisibility this week. This is week 5 in our course, and we've got the Potapchuk et al. Article really talks about in the beginning, imagine if you're looking through a pane of glass and you know it's there, but it's clear and you're looking on the other side and it's this pane of glass, right? And what if there's obstructions in it and you only ever looked through this pane of glass? Now imagine someone is next to you at a different angle, and they come in, but they don't know there's a pane of glass. What do they think about my opinion and I think about their opinion, each of us not knowing each other's perspective on the glass or how it distorts. So the war for me was an amazing teaching tool. I taught 4th and 5th grade Sunday school for some years. And every other year I would make sure to include the war, and every other year I would include a lesson, an icebreaker activity on creating your own rules on this desert island that juxtaposed with the 10 Commandments and the Beatitudes. So those were really important concepts for me, for kids to communicate what was happening. So representation of all those different people, these kids would be like cheering for or against characters in the beginning of the movie, laughing at characters at the beginning of the movie. By the middle, they had changed their minds and they weren't sure if they were supposed to be laughing. And at the end, you're just moved and you get to see the glass and you get to see the streaks. And also, it's a tragedy. So spoiler or warning, trigger warning. And finally, recently I watched this one, Dairy Girls, and I love my own positionality as being the same age as the girls in this television show during the time period it was watched. So, or during the time period it's created for. So I really, I don't have a lot of connections to my Irish heritage, like other people who came here and were not afforded whiteness. The people who came to this country prior to 1924 did not require a visa or a green card or anything. You just took a boat and showed up. So your fitness for entering the United States of America to become a worker and to realize this American dream of escaping the industrial world depended upon your family's ability to save up money to put you on a boat to get here, and then your ability to survive the ship. So I have family on my Italian side who died on the ship, and they just launch you over the side and you try to find someone to marry when you land. That's the Italian story on my side. The Irish story is, it was during the forced starvation and persecution of the Irish at that time by the English, also called the potato famine, where children coming over knew that their parents were going to starve to death. And so their parents said, don't ever look back. So if you asked my grandmother or any of her 13 siblings or their parents or aunts and uncles where they came from, they would tell you Newcastle, Pennsylvania. And it was very similar to the way that my husband's family, who survived the European Holocaust of the 1940s, spoke about their time in concentration camps or their time before. They said, we don't talk about that time, we move forward. And it's the same way my aunt's Japanese family talked about their time after internment camps. They said, we're focusing on now, right? So in Dairy Girls, there's this beautiful illustration of what it's like to be a teenage girl living through these times, focusing developmentally as you should on your entire social circle as the world. And everyone outside of it is so silly. The humor is amazing. They're so raw. They capture girls, teens, Ireland, the Troubles. So If you want to see more, you should be following me. I really am trying to get TikTok up on here, and it's enormously distracting. So you should be following me. I'm Patti Napolitano, social worker. For this course, you will be getting live updates as I post them, but if you're enrolled, you will also see this content within the weekly content folders. So if you want to go back and review, I will have these videos available, but just for the clarity of you moving through them, I'm going to have these videos just posted within your weekly content folder. So this week's assignment is a discussion board post. Now I've gone on for a little over 10 minutes now. I'd like you to try 5-10 minutes, just make a little YouTube video and post it up into your discussion board and talk about representation, people that you recognize, themes you have seen. Oh, and I forgot my very favorite one, which is, well, we'll talk about that one in another week. Thank you guys for joining me, and I'm looking forward to watching your discussion board posts.